Hello and welcome. It's our first digital photography lecture series, and we are thrilled to have Amy Stein and Stacy Merfar help us kick it off. Amy Stein's work explores man's evolving isolation from community, culture, and environment. Her photographs have been the subject of numerous national and international exhibitions and are included in the collections of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago, Contemporary Photography Chicago, and the George Eastman House Photography Collection, among others. Her first monograph, Domesticated, was published by Photolucida in 2008. Stacy Merfar is based in Sydney, Australia. Her work has been exhibited internationally, including the United States, Australia, and Europe. In May 2011, she had her curatorial debut with No Direction Home, an exhibition commissioned for the Head On Photo Festival in Sydney, Australia, which featured contemporary American artists working within the tradition of road trip photography. In 2010, Amy and Stacy embarked on a month-long trip throughout New South Wales, Australia. Tonight, we have a chance to hear about their experiences on the road and share their beautiful photographs, which resulted in the publication of a book entitled Tall Poppy Syndrome. An exhibition of their work is currently on view at Clamp Art Gallery in Chelsea, opening on Thursday? Yeah.
6 to 8.
All right, so you're all
There will be
invited.
wine. Please
Wine.
come.
So please help me welcome Amy and Stacy to our lecture series.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you so much, Jaime, for that wonderful introduction. And can I just ask, there are 2 copies of the book here. Can we just, in case we want to hold it up?
My copy right
Jaime, where's your copy?
I'll push it out.
Okay, here it is. Okay. Okay. Just so in case we want to hold it up, so we should have brought more copies. But there will be some copies at the gallery on Thursday. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Jaime gave such a wonderful introduction that we were going to introduce ourselves and show a little bit of our individual work before we talk about our collaboration. So we will just give you some visual references. So I'm Amy Stein. I'm an educator and photographer here. I live in New York City. I taught for this department for the Masters of Digital Photography for 4 or 5 years, and am now at Parsons, the New School, among other places. And so Jaime mentioned my domesticated series, which I just wanted to show you a few images of. I'm currently working on a body of work called Stranded, where I photograph stranded motorists across the country. I'm looking at that experience through the lens of, it's a road trip, and it's also an investigation of vulnerability and isolation in the American landscape. And so we show these images because we wanted to show our individual work before we talk about our collaborative project. And so
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Stacy Merfar. You'll see Arzu in my byline. That's my middle name. It means wish in Farsi. I'm a first-generation Iranian American, and I was born and raised in Long Island and lived in Stuytown until I married an Aussie and moved to Sydney about 5 years ago. My work has always been motivated by questions about identity and culture, being that I grew up with the dichotomy of being Iranian and American. And before I moved to Sydney, I worked on a 5-year project where I traveled through 29 states in the US, and it became a 2-part project called American Palimpsest, and this is what there was. So this first image is from American Palimpsest. It was made in 2006 in Texas. This image was shot in Colorado, also part of American Palimpsest, and I was interested in looking at how Americans use the natural landscape and how, as Americans, what that usage of the land meant as a cultural signifier. And this was what there was, where American Palimpsest deals with environmental changes of the early 21st century. This was what there was, asked questions about what was left behind in the wake of the suburban development that ended in the subprime crisis. So that's the final image. And to introduce how Amy and I met, we met in 2002 when I was a full-time student at the ICP, at the International Center of Photography. And we met in the color darkroom. And the color darkroom at ICP, I don't know if many of you have been there before, but at the time it was a sort of mecca. It was where, you know, the same people would come in and out, and we'd analyze each other's prints and look at color, and it was so important and so serious.
It takes a long time to print images in the color darkroom, and we got to know each other there.
Yeah, that's how we met. And then flash forward to 2009, I had moved to Sydney a year before, and Amy and I met at the Half King for a beer.
This is an Instagram image from the internet. So Stacy came back to the States and said, hey, there's Stacy's mom. Thanks for coming. And said, hey, do you want to get together and, you know, talk about photography? And she had moved away, and we had been in sporadic touch, but not in close touch. And we met for a drink, and I asked her how, she had just moved to Sydney about a year before, 6 months before. I asked her how her experiences, how she was experiencing Australia, and she mentioned the term tall poppy syndrome, and it was such a strange term to me. I became intrigued, and so she'll tell you a little bit about her experiences.
What I was telling Amy was that I went to Sydney thinking that you'd be able to make connections the same way that you would make in New York. You'd meet someone on the subway. I mean, it happened to me before where I would meet people at a party or at the subway, and then you just start working for them the next week, the next thing you know. Things happen really quickly. But when I moved to Australia, I realized that that's not the way things work there. And you need to build relationships, and it could take years before people hire you, and you need to be, whereas here, you know, we are really interested in exceptionalism and individuality, and you need to be sort of in the forefront and eager and willing and showing people that you're ready to work. There, you need to be kind of modest and sort of slow, and I don't know, it's a different kind of way of working, and that's how I came across tall poppy syndrome, and we'll describe what that means. And so we started talking and realized...
Oh, here we go. So let's just to move to the definition, and then we'll come back. Just to talk about tall poppy syndrome. So Stacy said this term, and it's such a strange term. I mean, it's similar to this idea in Japan, the nail that stands up will be hammered down, and the tall poppies, the individuals that stand out in society, will be cut down. And so there was just something about this term that, I mean, I literally said this would be an amazing book. There's this idea of the flowers, and then this kind of nefarious term, syndrome. So as she was describing her experiences, and I sort of started to think about the cultural or social ramifications of this, and the relationship between the idea of American exceptionalism or individuality, this striving that we're always, especially as maybe as artists or New Yorkers, we're always striving to, you know, be assertive and put ourselves out there and be exceptional. I saw this dichotomy between the reality of being an Australian perhaps and an American. So just to go back, we kind of hatched this idea over a beer. We were drinking some beers to go to explore this and do a project about it. And that conversation lasted about an hour, and then at the end of the conversation, the big question was, well, you know, we were gathering for this drink, and it was like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to fund it? How is it going to be a reality? My work is very much dedicated to an investigation of the American landscape, social, political, you know, physical landscape, and had never really considered a trip to Australia. So we, you know, went out into the night, and we said, okay, that was a great idea, but who knows how it's ever going to happen. And about a month later, I got an email through a contact from my undergrads to do a show at the Australian Centre for Photography. And just out of the blue, will you come to Australia? We'll pay your way. And so this idea we had seemed to be something that could happen. And I ended up doing a show at the ACP, which is in Sydney, which is kind of like the ICP of Australia. And through one of our contacts in Australia, there are these wonderful Australian books called Hijacked, where a wonderful kind of curator, he's kind of a photo presence in Australia, Mark McPherson, he has created a series of books that link Australian photography to more Western photography. to Americans, to British, to
German.
German photographers, and they're called Hijacked. So Mark is a big force in Australian photography, and he let the good people at Photo Frio know that we were coming. So that is the biggest photo festival in Australia. It happens every 2 years in Perth, which is on the west coast, and it's just a sprawling kind of photo festival, and they invite international and domestic artists. And so I was able to do the show at the ACP, and then we did our trip, and we were able to then present the work at Photo Frio, which was wonderful, just fresh off the road. So tall poppy syndrome. So we were sort of learning about the phrase, doing research, and we want to talk a little bit about the planning of the trip itself, and then what resulted from the trip.
Oi.
All right. Stacey doesn't like this. Look at the one in the bottom. We had just woken up, or I had, or something.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I went back to Sydney. Amy stayed in New York, and we had to figure out how we were gonna make this project happen. So a lot of the planning was done on the internet, and Skype was our best friend, and timeanddate.com to make sure we weren't messing with each other's time zones. And so when we started conceptualizing the project, we had a lot of ideas of what to shoot, and we decided we wanted to put together a wish list. So we started out with what our own preconceived ideas as Americans are of Australia, because I'd only been living there a year. I still didn't know or understand very much about the country, and Amy had her preconceived ideas, and we all think of Australia as kangaroos and Crocodile Dundee. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of what I imagined before I went there for the first time. So we started researching. We'd read books, watch movies, talk to people, research on the internet, and from that we put together a wish list. And just to give you an idea of some of the things.
We were crossing things off as we photographed them. We were also looking for, because we were investigating tall poppy syndrome, our idea was to go and look to see if we could find evidence of this kind of cultural phenomenon. Not as scientists, but as visual artists, obviously. So we came up with a number of different types of people, and also Stacey and an assistant of ours did a lot of research around finding people who were local. Well, maybe you want to talk about Australia Day winners.
Yeah, so well, on our wish list, some of the things that we had were like small town mayors, municipal workers, farmers, local business owners, athletes, outback landscape, and then other more metaphorical ideas. And we kind of had this idea that we would put together this wish list, we would do all this research, come up with all these ideas that we had, and then once we got on the road, it would become more kind of let all of those ideas go out the window and allow ourselves to experience what was there. So what you'll kind of hear from both of us is that some of it was planned and some of it happened spontaneously or organically.
So I just want to say here, one of the questions that has come up is but we're film shooters. This is a digital program, but we are both film shooters. We went to Australia with about four cameras, I think, 2 6x7 cameras and 2 4x5 cameras. And thanks to Katrine and lots of letters, we were given a wonderful sponsorship by Kodak, where they provided all of the film for the project. So we had no other, we wrote other letters. We tried to get other things. We didn't.
It was the most successful sponsorship.
But it defrayed some of the costs, because my ticket was covered and then the film was covered, and we went with thousands of rolls and sheets of film to and coolers to shoot this project. So thank you, Kodak, and thank you, Katrine. Made a big difference. And I think this is one of the trips back to Sydney. We were processing the film as well. And so. You want to talk about the route?
Yeah, so once we felt we had an idea of what we wanted to photograph and what Tall Poppy Syndrome, the book, was going to be about, we decided we need to figure out what our route was going to be. We knew we had 3 weeks specifically to photograph, and we knew we had to get something within those 3 weeks. So just to give you a sense of where we were, right? So that's the whole, this is our route.
As you can see, we saw all of Australia.
Many people don't realize that the landmass of Australia is equivalent to the landmass of the continental United States. So it's massive. And something to be said for that is that Tall Poppy Syndrome is not an absolute fixed idea. We never wanted to go out and claim that it existed or didn't exist. It was just something that we thought was an interesting idea to bounce ideas off of and to start this project from. And in no way can we claim that in that little part of the country will we be able to find out an entire cultural.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, we were tracing something sort of amorphous, something in the air. I mean, we were asking people, do you think this is something that you've been a victim of, or that you've practiced that you maybe you weren't aware that you were practicing, or is this just something kind of in the air in Australia? And I mean, having said that too, I mean, I had always been somewhat suspicious of the limitations of going to a foreign country that's not your own and trying to make a statement about that country on a kind of a very broad level, or kind of a broader, through a broader lens. And this was a way we could really be quite specific, look at issues and concerns, questions that were important to us in Australia, in America, wherever, but do it in this kind of foreign land that's halfway or totally around the world, right? So, yeah. So then we got there. We were there. Okay, so just to show you a little bit about the trip. So we, as you can see from the projects that we've shown you that we were working on individually, we were using the road, the American road, as a sort of a structure and a conduit for making our work. Stacy went to 29. You went to
29
states
different states, yeah.
to make the two
American
projects.
concepts.
And I don't know how many states I've been through to photograph Stranded. I've been on it's like many different places, but the same place, the side of the road. But again and again. But it was an adventure. We were up for an adventure. And one of the things we really wanted to bring out in this talk, and we should start talking about now, I think, is this idea of collaboration and this what it's brought to our practice. I mean, in a sense, I think this opportunity was such a wonderful opportunity. At the time I was teaching here, I was teaching at Parsons, I was able to get a month off to go because of the support of Katrine and other chairs, Arthur O, and at Parsons, to be able to take the time to do this and to be able to get the funding, and then working with Stacy and just as a sort of a break from both of our normal practices of working individually. So what's not to love about this idea of taking off in this little SUV thing.
That's big,
had,
buddy.
Packed to the gills. It was more packed. We did have an assistant with us. Just a brief tangential story, and she, 3 days into a month-long project, she left. She took an overnight bus back to Sydney. She could not handle it. She said, she had already researched the buses and then came to us. It was like being broken up with. She wanted off our bus, and yeah, we were all sleeping in the same room. It was really intense, and we were shooting from morning till night. I mean, we were shooting every moment of the day to, we were there to do this thing. So just to show you a little bit of, a lot of the landscape looked like this. We were, in a sense, we did a lot of research beforehand. I mean, I didn't have any sense of, other than the cliches of, kangaroos, Outback Steakhouse, the Outback itself. I didn't know much about Australia, and that really appealed to me. Although we watched some great movies. There's a wonderful movie called Walkabout, which is a really kind of a terrifying movie about the Australian outback. And but I do want to say that whole route was really us trying to get to the outback. And we told a gallerist, there's a gallerist, Deborah Klump Ching, who's Australian. Oh, we were at the edges of the outback, and she sort of laughed at us, or laughed at me, because this idea of the edges of the outback is such a, it's the whole middle of the country. It's like saying the edges of the American desert. Like, what does that mean? But in our minds, that was sort of like where we were trying to get the whole time. But a lot of the landscape looked like, kind of similar in a sense to the American, I think, the Midwest in a sense. So this is what we saw a lot of. And we took a lot of pictures, I took some pictures like this, which Stacy warned me not to, the wombat crossing and the kangaroo crossing. I think this is the first day. And we spent a lot of time stopping and investigating the side of the road. And as you do in most road trips, we spent a lot of time staying in really small, cheap, homey motels. And this was, poor Stacy, this was the sight she had to see. This is the one you're going to cut out every night as we were, planning our little white Mac laptops. And so we just want to, maybe Tom wants to do it. We're going to actually show the images from the book now and talk about how we approached the project visually. But this was,
Okay, here we are. We're trying to photograph this, and we're out here. And where are we? We're past Silverton. Hello. And look up, Stacy. Hi. Let me see your hat.
Oh, I was 7.5
And
months
we
pregnant.
are, here's our image. Oh my God. It's there somewhere. And we're setting up the camera. Oh my God, and the bugs are all over us. So we're being spastic. The mosquitoes are everywhere. Okay, so here's the image, beautiful. So we're past Silverton. This is where Mad Max was filmed. And
They come into your eyeballs.
yeah, they're coming in. They're ridiculous. They're swarming all around me. Okay. I was going to end in a second, I promise. Sorry, it was like I had too many coffees that day. Okay, on to the images. So that was a lot of.
That's what
We
we
were
were
trying
like.
We were also trying to record this is after our assistant left. She was supposed to be kind of doing this stuff, but we were, oh God, back. I have it upside down. And that's the image we made that day, which is so kind of serene and lovely, and the flies were, when you get out of the car in Australia, the bugs start like affixing it's just awful. So just to talk about now the themes in the work and the way we photographically approached the project. This is, and these images are in the show at Clamp Art. This was the first day of shooting, and we, again, on our wish list, we had a number of different, and Stacy and our assistant contacted a number of different organizations and groups of people, including a rugby team, some prominent social and community groups, and medical groups in the country as well. But just to show you a little bit these are two images that are paired in the book. And these, when our assistant was still around, she took some images of us shooting. So we were often, now that I have some distance from it, so we did it in February and March of 2010. Now that we have some distance and we made the book and done the show, I mean, I often think about just the role of collaboration and the role of working with another person, and how that can just be this wonderful thing for your practice. I mean, this is the first day. We both have our cameras set up. We're approaching. We have to figure out, negotiate, approach. We've set up the fact that we're going to photograph these people. We haven't just, come into their rugby pitch. But and then we have to decide how we're going to approach visually and artistically and psychologically the images and our subjects. Just to show you a little bit of background. So the whole process was about negotiation and understanding how each other worked and how we were going to every day shoot and create images that would investigate this process and investigate the syndrome, tall poppy syndrome. Stacy was also 7.5 months pregnant. So at the point, 7.5 months pregnant, and we're driving in the middle of nowhere, and then the assistant leaves, and I've just landed from America. I mean, it just was kind of crazy. We were really gutted when she left, and we made a number of images just after. So just to show you a little bit of the process, working with subjects, explaining to them what we were after. This young woman with the blonde hair on the left is like the most successful teen in the region or something.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what she was, but it was something like that. She had won some award from her school.
Mm-hmm. And so this is the image we made in the end. So often we worked, we would be behind the ground glass together, working together behind the 4x5 in negotiating in real time what the image would look like. Or we would be individually with our cameras, but in the same kind of space. We never, we were always together for a month. It was really intense.
I think we forgot to say as well is that we started out with the project thinking from the beginning that all the images were going to have both of our names on them. So that kind of mindset was how we started off everything, from the planning to the photographing to the editing and to the book. And I think it was really important for us to have that idea at hand to begin with, to know that we were going to just put a whole pot, all the images were going to go into one pot, and they were going to get mixed up, and whatever came of it is what was going to come of it. So the way we approached it was to get as many images and as much work done as possible in the 3 weeks. And that's how sometimes we would work with one camera, one person would negotiate the subjects, and one person would be negotiating the camera, and other times we'd be in 2 separate parts of the same location. And what's the third? I can't remember.
Well, we were always within kind of eyesight of each other, which
in a sense, was very different from the way that we both had worked, obviously. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you that are photographers are working on your own and working with your own practice. And so this was kind of, in a sense, very pre-planned with images of people as we were shooting. Other images came about through wonderful connections we made, which we'll tell you about this image in a second. But again, a lot, when we do interviews, a lot of people ask us about the idea of the images being authored by both of us. And this is the image on the postcard, just to show you. But, you know, how we would negotiate that. And I think that became, I mean, it's easy to say at the end, well, it really alludes to this kind of like the egalitarianism of the tall poppy syndrome. I mean, I wish, you know, that it was more organic than that. It was just about, Stacy did all the planning. I was here in the States. I was working on sponsorships, and we were just kind of pooling our resources to try to create a body of work that we were completely entwined in making. So in the end, maybe it's a female thing too. I don't know. We just decided to just, you know, have them be by both of us. And having said that, the process was, you know, of kind of getting out and trying to make images as an individual artist, but then together. But I mean, the process of is very assaulting on the artist's ego. And that's something that, you know, you build up, and you need to build up as an artist to say, hey, look at my work has meaning, my work is important, this is something that you should care about, I have this particular point of view that's, you know, is valuable and valid. And then when you're working with another artist, it's, and you're kind of shooting together, it can be, for me, it was very challenging for my ego, which was a very important thing for me, I think, and a good outcome of the collaboration to understand what it means to work, not with a writer or an assistant, but a peer, and to work together and to be negotiating in real time who's going to make the image, who's going to have control over the image, who's going to talk to the subjects, and how, you know, how the images are going to be made. And then there's the whole negotiation around editing the project, the book, and the show and everything. So just to show you a few images, shooting, and this image is also in the show. These are the, you want to tell me about this?
This is the Country Women's Association. So part of the planning that we did was to look for social groups that were important. The Country Women's Association is embedded in Australian culture. It's in every town, and they try and do good around their area. And then there's also a national sector of it as well. So
they're like the Daughters of the American Revolution or something. They're right, like upstanding.
Yeah, well, you
ladies.
can see if you go back. If you go back to the other, where's this image?
Right
Yeah,
here.
it says, honor to God, loyalty to the throne, service to the country, through country women, for country women, by country women.
Yeah, a lot of country women. There are a lot of pictures of the Queen around. I mean, we put these in because we wanted to show, here's the process. We made this image together, and then we split up, and we each investigated. You know, you need that outlet when you're shooting with someone else and you're shooting this kind of, you know, these setup scenes. You kind of need your own outlet to then go and investigate. So we each split up into different rooms, and I was drawn to this, well, we shouldn't say who we made each image. One of us was drawn to the woman, and one of us was drawn to the still life. And in the end, they both made it into the book and support the individual image, which we also were, we hadn't really talked about this, but we also were channeling, I'm always thinking about photographic references. We were channeling a number of photographers that we really admire. Oh, yeah. Rob Hornstro's 101 Billionaires, which is about Russia, his investigation of Russia. Simon Norfolk's images of Simon Roberts, rather, images of Britain and Russia as well. And Paul,
That's right.
This is a direct reference to Paul Shambroom, who did a number of a body of work of town meetings. Shows with Julie Saw Gallery here in New York. You want to tell about this?
Oh yeah. Okay. So one of the other things that we were looking at were Australia Day winners, and in Australia, every town picks on Australia Day their kind of people to honor. And when we were looking for tall poppies, or what we thought were tall poppies, it's not the exact definition that Australians would call a tall poppy. For us, we use it as an American reference. So as Americans, we want to celebrate people that are heroic, or that are successful, or that are individuals within their own communities. And so this man, Mon, the one with the car shirt,
Far left.
he found him through some Australia Day award website, and he had saved a burning man out of he had saved a man out of a burning oil truck, and for that heroic act, he won an Australia Day award. So we had planned to meet him for an hour and photograph him.
And wait, he wasn't like in the oil truck. He was in his house, saw the oil truck crash, ran out of his house, right?
Yeah.
Ran to the
crash.
pulled a guy out, that would have died out of it. It was just an amazing man.
And
And that's his son.
that's his son, and we ended up spending the whole day with them. And that's how we got to photographing the school children, because his son has 2 kids in the school. It's a town of 289 people, I think, and the school has 45 kids. And because of this, we had set up to shoot Mon, but ended up getting a lot more out of it. And actually, the image of Mon never made it into the book.
Yeah, this is the picture we took, and we were sorry.
That's okay.
So it turns out when we met him, his son was really protective of him, and because this is the site of the graves of his 2 other sons, who were coming back to this small town and crashed and died in a car accident, and very, very sad. And so of course we're really moved by this. We made this image, and we also made. Here's one of our cameras, and we made the image of the grave. In the end, when you go to edit a book, even though those experiences are really why we travel and why we photograph and why we engage with the world, to learn about these people and to share their experience, they didn't make it into the book. But through spending the day with him, we ended up photographing. There he is. We have a real soft spot for him.
The book is dedicated to him,
The
too.
book-
It has a dedication to him.
It does?
Yeah.
It does. Okay, it's dedicated to him. Yeah, in the back. We did that. He gave us these wonderful. These are Akupra hats. They're Australian hats. Just lovely.
You saw them in the video that we were trying to use them. They said they would help us with the flies.
Yeah. But in the end, we ended up going with him to the school and photographing. This is a one-room schoolhouse, and we'll talk about this image in a second. So to get to the images in the actual in the book and in the series and in the show, just to talk a little bit about the themes of the that we were looking at. I mean, so again, we're there for a month. There's a limited amount you can do. I mean, a lot of you probably work on very long-term projects. If you're looking at a landscape as vast and as varied as a country like Australia, but we knew that we had to make each day count. And so, of course, we were looking at the landscape. This is an image of obviously we're talking about the kind of social landscape of Australia, so the people themselves beyond the trees. Trees, and you'll see, are a big theme in the series. And then we poke around these small towns, and something like this comes up, which is just a wonderful, has
Metaphor of tall poppy.
obviously
Right. I mean, the kangaroo is the man in this image.
and breaking away from the pack and all of this. So we're looking for that, and some days you're like a little desperate to find these things, and some days they kind of just come to you, and you're thinking literally about the idea and metaphorically as well, and as visual artists. So some of these themes. Some of these themes came forward in the editing, and others we knew we were onto them as we were shooting. The day after our assistant left, we were like
This is the day of.
The day
we
of.
left her, and then we were on the road.
And we had to leave, and she totally rejected us. And she didn't want to. And then we saw these these prune trees, and this idea of the pruning, and obviously the relationship to the cutting of the tall poppies. And so, I guess the idea is to be aware of these things as you see them in the landscape. And we almost didn't shoot these, and these are. I would say they're a gatefold in the book, and I will talk about the book in a moment. But so they spread out, and they are a big part of the show, and for me a big part of the. I'll show it in a second of the project, and they're shown like this in the book, 4 across. The stumps, the cut down trees. So once you start identifying these metaphors, you can play them out, and some of them don't make it into the edit, and some of them in the end do. This is some red earth. We're getting into the outback at this point. And then, of course, we're thinking about the idea of the individual and the collective, the individual and the group, and always trying to make that relationship. And a lot of those relationships are made in the book and the show through the juxtapositions of the images. But as you're making them, you're just compiling. So we shot thousands of images from the coast into the outback to sort of have the material later on to work with.
sorry, that guy doesn't look very good up there. But many people we arranged to meet, and others we found along the way. I had no problem going up to strangers to photograph them. People are, they're lovely when you, in the end, when you just open yourself up to them, they in turn often open themselves up to you. Not always, but. And then the idea of uniformity, conformity. As we were going through to edit the book, there was a lot of looking for these kind of visual and formal relationships, and the idea of the school children image and the uniforms, either municipal uniforms or worker uniforms, and also uniforms of school children.
And also thinking about how tall poppy syndrome starts. One mayor that I met said to me that he believes that tall poppy syndrome starts from childhood, that in his town, kids don't want to excel. They don't want to be A+ students, and they don't want to be the best jocks because they're afraid of being ridiculed by their peers. And he thought it was a really big problem in his town. That being said, another mayor said, oh no, we don't have tall poppy syndrome here. What are you talking about? That doesn't exist. That's nonsense. But for us, the idea of the school uniform, I didn't grow up going to a school with a uniform, and so whenever I see kids in their uniform, everyone in Australia has to wear a school uniform, public school and private school. And so that was a big theme for us, and then led on into the adults as well. Did you
They seem to be able to choose what they can wear, though, but because they have like 3 different ones.
Well,
I
yeah,
just
they
noticed
have
that.
a few different options, but I think every school is
casual.
different.
And of course, Australia, I don't know if anyone knows Joni Sternbach, but of course thinking about, it's hard to take a picture of surfers without thinking about her beautiful work. But, this idea too of the kind of, the uniform of the wetsuits, thank you. Municipal workers, obviously engaged in a very important
Something else that we
project.
thought was really important for the projects is the titles of the images. So for instance, that image is called Stands Out Like Dog's Balls, which, because in Australian English is really funny. And so that means it's totally obvious. It stands out like dog's balls. So
Yes, enjoy the plates in the back of the book. We had fun with them, because if not, it would be like municipal workers number 3 or something. So, so just to go, to move forward. So we were taking every opportunity we could to. This is early morning, and gold mining is very important, a very important part of their economy. These are really great jobs to have, very high-paying jobs and very dangerous jobs to have. And back to the surfers. Individuals we just met along the way.
I think what was really important for Amy and I when we were editing the book was really to bring out this idea of the individual versus the group. So when we edited this talk for you guys, we wanted to really kind of focus on which images were, how they set apart and what kind of conversation they bring together when they're sequenced together.
And then, of course, you can't help but photograph and include, perhaps, in an edit, some of the kind of icons and cliches of the country, of the continent. The kangaroos. There's one kangaroo image, and then the skins in the book.
And the mural. We
and the
did
mural.
not let go of the kangaroos.
Yeah.
The kangaroos were definitely.
And then you
And then
come
in
across
there.
something like this, which is knocked down. There's this reference to tall poppy. In my, if you're looking for it, you see it everywhere, right? And then someone has put these little puppets that represent the koala bears. I guess koalas are Australian, right? Yeah. And the kangaroos there to sort of and you see this in an arcade. You're looking for it, and you're always kind of trying to explore. When we went into the arcade, we were like, well, there's got to be something in here because it's an arcade in a small town. Of course, the flag, looking for references. I had in my mind, when I went, the Southern Cross is a constellation that you can see only from the Southern Hemisphere, and particularly from Australia. It's on the flag. And I guess when I was doing research online, I came across an image of a man, big beefy arm with a tattoo of a Southern Cross on it. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to find some dude or some Southern Cross tattooed on a body. But I never did. It was like my dream image. But we were looking at the flag. This is the route of, we photographed, and it's maybe not in this presentation, but a group called the Royal Flying Doctors, a really singular group, like almost they're like the SEALs. What are they called? Navy SEALs. Kind of. They're doctors that fly into the outback and rescue people,
in car crashes and serve the outback because there's not a lot of healthcare there.
They could be on a station,
Yeah,
a farm
it's just
that's
very rural
200
there. So
kilometers.
They fly
and
in, and so this is their route. This is how they fly. These are their routes, and this is so it's like an ambulance in the sky. So instead of, finding, this is the map that we used in the book. And of course, we're thinking too of other metaphors for this idea of the individual and the group. Flocks of animals, or groups of animals, flocks. You want to talk about? You want to talk about that?
Sure. So the way we came across this image was the night before we went to a bowling. Australians play bowls, which I don't know how to describe it, but it's a Commonwealth game. And we met this wonderful man, and he flies pigeons. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, homing pigeons.
Homing pigeons. So we went to his house thinking we were going to get a portrait of this beautiful man, but ended up with the portrait of the flock of birds. I've never seen anything like that before. I mean,
Just pigeons everywhere.
everywhere.
And then, also this idea of what you want to talk about.
Oh yeah, so talking about titles, again, this one is called A Single Crimson Rosella Within a Flock of Rainbow Lorikeets. And these kind of birds normally are never seen together. And so when I saw them, it was quite an interesting moment and sort of, here he is, he's standing out from the crowd, he's his own individual.
He's like Zelig. He's trying to interlopers trying to get in there.
Yeah.
But he stands out. So, again, trying to sort of prove out this point and create this metaphor, not through directly going at the idea of individuals and people, but animals as well. So this is the final image in the book and also the cover of the book. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the aftermath and also the making of the book. If anyone's interested in, I know there's a big energy around photo books and making your own photo book. So of course you get all the film back. You are so excited. Your negatives are there in front of you. You're brimming at the, it all looks amazing. Then we had thousands of images. Worked with an assistant, a wonderful assistant, to pull contact sheets and create an edit. So the process of shooting was a collaboration and planning was a collaboration, but I mean, editing and sequencing a book is just like so difficult, and also when you're doing it with someone else and you're negotiating, collaborating, it was quite a challenge. So we said, let's make a book. We knew we wanted to share the work, and we went to my gallerist here in New York, Brian Clamp. It's the first time I'd heard from him. If you guys make a small book, then we'll do a show. So okay, well, let's make a book. So we made a book. So we each came up with an edit of about 40 images. We laid them all out on a table at Stacy's mother's house. I think you were there that day. Small prints, small little inkjet, like little laser prints of the images that we thought were contenders for a portfolio to approach a publisher. And we took turns, one at a time, each choosing images, up to 40 each. So we had a portfolio of 80 images. And then we went through an issue of, okay, we wanted to do a book, but a lot of people I know, a lot of my friends are making maquettes of their book, and we just didn't think that, just seemed like we just didn't think we had it in us at that point. So we took the chance to just make a box of prints. I took it to the Art Book Fair in New York in 2011 and met with a publisher that I knew named John Jenkins. I just knew him very briefly. I'd met him a couple years before at the book fair. There's the book fair. If anyone has not been, it's a wonderful chance to look at our photo books and art books. It happens at the end of September, early October every year at PS1. He was there. I showed him a box of 80 prints in a kind of a dark corner. I thought, there's no way this is going to lead to anything, because we're standing up, he's looking, but he's also trying to conduct business at his booth and sell the books that he's already made. And but then about a week later, he emailed me for a PDF. He said, I'm considering 30 books for publication this year. I didn't know how many he was going to make. And then by the end of 2011, we got an email, I'd like to do your book. He ended up doing 2 books, our book and Brian Fink's book called Construction. And so he chose 2 out of those 30. So we feel very lucky to be able to be one of those 2 books. And a wonderful publisher. He's out of Seattle, Washington, and just does a really beautiful job. To his credit, everything we sort of wanted in the book, we were able to kind of get into the book. So the way we worked was, and I think a great way to work is to make these just really you know, color corrected, but really small and, you know, thin. These are, I think, printed here or at Parsons on the laser printer. They're from contact sheets, so they're not even final. You can see they're basically, you can see the edge of the film, just to see what we had. But it was enough so we could see the content and see the potential of the images. So we moved these things around constantly. This is basically the beginning of the edit of the book. And what we would do once we knew we needed to make a book quite quickly, Stacy was in Australia, and she was sleeping while I was awake and vice versa, and we would just keep editing and moving around. And that was probably one of the hardest points in our relationship, trying to sequence and edit a book together, because I don't know if anyone's done it, it's hard to do it on your own, but when you're negotiating with someone else and their vision, and it feels
across
very
the world.
hard across the world. It was very hard. So we would take little iPhone images, little and videos of the kind of, you know, the sequence, and then send them back and forth, and we kept at that for about 2 really painful weeks of editing. And then, so we're working with John. He's laying out the cadence of the book. We know we need, you know, so you're trying to place your images amongst the text, amongst the gatefolds, which are these, do you want to pull that up? Which are these wonderful, my friend Brian Ulrich has a book called Copia, which was published by Aperture last year, and he has a wonderful gatefold, which are 2 pages that open up of 4 Best Buys, Circuit Cities rather. So they open up from here. 4 circuit cities that are closed, and so we, you know, we started looking at other books to get inspiration, and that was one thing that we wanted these images to have a relationship to each other, and they were positioned like that on the road. So we were able to, you know, convince John to invest the money. You know, everything you do with a book that goes beyond just the you know, the pages on a book, like a gatefold, costs money, and so that's a negotiation with the publisher. Sometimes you have to make, you know, sacrifices someplace else, as we probably all know in life. We have another gatefold of the gold miners as well. So just to show you, we're playing with this kind of template. We're having to make really tough decisions, as you always do with your images. And just to show you a few images from the book, a few of the spreads, just to finish up. We wanted to, you know, we were told that there was a budget for an essay, and often with books you want to maybe have an essay by a curator or by, some people choose a poet or a fiction writer or a curator or a critic, but we were working quite quickly, so we decided.
Well, we wanted the book to be the object, so we felt that an essay was kind of extra and took away from what this was itself. So we decided that we didn't want an essay in the end.
Just something really pared down. We do define tall poppy syndrome in there, just for, you know, because it is an obscure term. And then these are some of the pairings in the book, playing around with different relationships of the images. Some are the same size, some are slightly different sizes, and then images, you know, that have formal relationships to each other. Maybe not relationships in the moment, but you know, as you come back and you edit, you find these wonderful relationships related to color, form, content, that have some kind of, you know, that do something other than maybe what was happening in the moment. They embody a spirit when they're placed together. Others were going through the gutter as well, through the middle of the book, and then you have to think about that as well. There's our one kangaroo. The kangaroos are there like a deer. You know, they come to the campsites and jump around, massive kangaroos. And I did want to say, I mean, some of the images, this is one of the last images, and then the first image in the book of the girl with the heart necklace. A lot of the people are kind of staring back at us as we look at them, and they are somewhat other, living in this other country, but you know, but quite, in a sense, quite similar, and similarities we all have, and have a very direct gaze. And others are, you know, it's purposeful that there's this kind of averted gaze or this kind of more dreamy state to the subject. And this is the first image in the book as well.
Negotiating the cover.
So one of the things that you negotiate with your publisher is the cover. The publisher basically has the final say in the cover. We spent a long time on the cover. And just to show you all the iterations and all the ideas, some were a little more academic looking, some were a little more yeah, not as successful. I was really wanted those trees somewhere, but in the end we have the the cover that is a little more poetic, maybe a little more emotive or expressive, and works with it. And there's the book, published by Decode. You do you go to the we launched this at the Art Book Fair, which was a wonderful thing. The year before we went, pitched the book. Here we are the next year. You make a book, you spend a year on a book. It can happen. It's a great opportunity. We're signing. There's John Jenkins there, signing the book, some of his other books as well. And there's a show, as we've said, and please come to the opening. And I think we just have...
It's on this Thursday, 6 to 8.
And the book is quite different. I mean, I think the show is a different expression of the ideas, and I'm quite proud of the show. And
it's another iteration of the collaboration, and I think something that Amy and I really wanted to talk about, or really, make emphasis on, is that we're two totally different women coming from different backgrounds, and this idea of collaboration was really important for us to figure out how to negotiate each other's egos and each other's working process, and I think for me, what I'm most proud of this work is that collaboration, that working together, and what we've come from. And from the beginning, the planning, the shooting, the editing, and the exhibition has all been a collaborative process between the two of us.
And then you're collaborating with your publisher or your gallerist, and they have also opinions as well. I mean, there's always
too many opinions.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a unique thing for us because we're going to go on our way and do our own individual projects, and we're moving on with that. But it's just it's something that's really, I think for me, really invigorated my interest in photography and my whole practice and the way I view my own individual practice as well. Yeah. So that's us, and we want to say thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions, here's postcards for the show. It's Julie Graham from Clamp Art.
Do a book called The Two Poppy Syndrome about your collaboration.
That's what we hope these talks will do.
Questions?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'm just wondering what your insistence was about using film, about it being analog.
We both shoot film anyway. I cannot take a good picture with a digital camera. I mean, it just does not work. I'm a film photographer, and I think Amy feels the same way.
Yeah.
At least till now, and especially at that point. That was in 2010.
I mean, at one point, our 3-day assistant said, it would be so easy if you guys were shooting digital. Look at all this film we have to lug around and keep cool. And then I had to, I mean...
I wonder if she left.
It's true. And, a lot of it, did I ship some of it? I don't know if I shipped some of it or they shipped it directly to Stacey, but I carried a lot of it through, trying to shield it from, during security in the airport. And, it would have been easier, but we're film shooters.
Process it there in Australia.
We did process it, but this was getting it over there. We had to get it over on Exposed, right? So we did process it there.
Film in Australia is super expensive. Like
Yeah.
one roll of film, I think, is $10 a roll.
And it was coming from Rochester, so, we were getting free film, so we weren't. I'm not complaining. It was wonderful to have all that film, but yeah, I feel like I'm just at the point with a new project where I'm just considering, because of Tim Briner, because of one of your colleagues, just considering this kind of new Nikon camera, I think, that's come out, but still shooting film. That's where we came up. I mean, we met at the darkroom, the ICP, and the darkrooms barely exist now. So, and of course, the other answer is we love the look of film, and maybe there's also the relationship to the camera and the format of the camera. The digital. I mean, unless you're shooting a medium format digital, which I can't afford right now at this point, but the relationship of the format, it's just not the way I see. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
There are all those considerations.
That's what I mean by I can't take a good photo with a digital camera, because I'm so closely related to the medium format and the large format that when I look through an SLR, just doesn't equate for me. The language isn't the same.
But I mean, having said that, they're not darkroom prints, analog darkroom prints in the gallery. We went through, with the help of Nate Ramirez, who's here tonight, we went through the whole proofing process, of obviously scanning, doing proofs for the book on the wonderful Epson 3880, and then printing a show of pigment prints for the show. So it's my first, we were both working with Digital Seas, and this is the first pigment print, inkjet print show.
So there is a digital aspect to the work.
I mean, you can't avoid it, but yeah.
I wanted to know, how was the local reception to the book, or have you been back to Australia with the book? And, sometimes culturally speaking, people have one idea about a sort of cultural norm, and then, outsiders come in and they're like, what are you doing? Did that happen?
It's a great question. The book isn't available yet as widely in Australia. It comes out, I think, in May or April to be distributed in bookstores, but I live in Sydney still. And when people first see the book, their initial reaction is, what do you know about tall poppy syndrome? And then, I think it starts out as maybe a little bit kind of uneasy, and then it becomes a huge, beautiful conversation about tall poppy syndrome versus the American dream and being American and Australian. And so I think it's been received really well with the colleagues that I've shown it to so far, but it's only the beginning.
We're planning some shows there this year in 2013, so it's going to be interesting to see. That's, very important for me. It's great to show it in New York, but it's so obscure, and it's like, okay, I have a show in New York about Australia. It's a strange thing, I think, for everyone involved in a sense, but to really to know how it's going to be received there and to experience that, I think will be very important. And again, we are not trying to make a definitive statement about this, and we are very aware of how fraught this proposition is to go to a foreign place and start. We're using this as a lens through which to engage with the culture, and investigating whether it was a structure for exploration.
Some people find the term tall poppy syndrome very controversial and very sort of uneasy, and then other people just kind of say, it's not really important to me, or it's from a bygone era. It's not really true today. And then other people say, yeah, I've completely experienced it. So,
we weren't trying to, in a sense, be critical about the culture. We were just trying to use it as a kind of a means of exploration and the start of an engagement about social and cultural realities that we'd be interested in the States, anywhere in the world. The way people live and the way they interact with each other and the way they relate to each other. So it'll be very important to see. We'll keep you guys posted.
Good luck.
thank you.
I just wanted to know, how did you first come across the term? How did you first
I
hear
think my
from-
husband told me about it. Yeah, I think the first year that I moved to Australia was a really difficult year for me, and I was adjusting. It's an interesting place because it's so similar to the US, speak English. American TV is everywhere, it's so influenced by American pop culture. But it's a British colony, or it was a British colony. It's not a British colony anymore. And yeah, everything is kind of upside down, Everything is literally upside down. I just arrived on Sunday night. It's actually, I think, like 8 in the morning for me now. So that first year was very difficult for me, learning about the cultural differences and being a New Yorker. And so from the experiences that I had, I think my husband was the one who told me about it. Oh, that's tall poppy syndrome.
It's like a term it's like manifest destiny or something. It's like a term that maybe isn't used every day, but that
Everyone understands it.
People know it. It's
Well, it's like in America, it's like definitely pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and
Right.
that's everybody knows.
Right.
It's in every campaign. And
right, exactly.
And tall poppy syndrome does come up in in media conversations a lot as well, in the newspapers and.
When you think about their celebrities, like they're all like, oh, I'm not really that famous. Hugh Jackman, like, oh, it's nothing, and you're like, yeah, you are.
That's because they're afraid of being pulled down by media. Media, it's talked about a lot in the papers, and a lot of different instances happen it's mostly with, not celebrities, but people that are in the limelight.
How do you explain like somebody like Rupert Murdoch?
Well, I think a lot of, there's this thing, when you mentioned Hugh Jackman, a lot of famous Australians have had to, in a sense, leave the country and come to America to kind of really kind of achieve, you know, this kind of cultural status, or maybe become the kind of leaders of media or industry or film. So yeah, I mean, I think that also it's very common in
Hugh
sports.
Jackman really might be being diffident for that reason.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah,
Huh.
I mean, it's probably ingrained in him because, you know, if you think
Right.
about people like Naomi Watts or Nicole Kidman, or, you know, that are, you know, and in a sense, I mean, I'm sure they're very wonderful people that also are maybe, you know, when you're living that life, you're also not aware of, like, I don't know, you're just also yourself. So maybe you're actually feeling that way, that I'm not that famous. Like, I have my own problems and I'm still struggling, and so-and-so, look at Russell Crowe, he's more famous than me or something. You know, it's all on a sliding scale, I guess. You know, we don't know. But,
how did you approach the people you photographed, and did anyone not want to be photographed after they found out about the Tall Poppy Syndrome project?
I don't think anybody said no. Did anybody say no? I don't remember.
anyone said no.
People were really excited. First of all, I was 7.5 months pregnant. So, and Amy with her American accent and me with my American accent were like, hi, you know, we were quite the show in town, in most of the towns that we rocked up in. So people were really encouraging, and now I've started sending out books to people that are in it, and they've all sent beautiful thank you letters back. So I don't think it's been a problem for people.
I mean, I think when I talk about Stranded and when I do my artist talks, I always get asked this question, like, how did you approach people? And I think a lot of people are really afraid to approach strangers. And what I've learned over the years is, if you just, like, some people will say no in any situation. They'll always say no, or they don't feel like it, or they're busy. But if you just do it enough people it will be so rewarding. And, you know, if you're confident and open and, you know, not too assertive, but assertive enough, people really respond to that. People want to be seen. You know, they want to engage. They want to be engage with the camera and engage with someone who's interested in them. And so I think it's just a matter of, you know, I used to be so nervous and shy, and then you just get over it because you're like, I want that picture. You know, it's going to be more important for me to have that image than to, like, shy away and preserve whatever, like, you know, fear I have and cater to that fear. So it's just about, like, asking. Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to, I was very interested in your editing process, and sort of a two-part question. Did anybody besides you two have input as to the edit? And also, the man that you guys like so much, I'm interested in that whole thing of being, like, really loving something about an image, but it not being quite right for the project. Was there more than one? How did you sort that out?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is, like, you can never forget which images are yours, right? Because they're like your kids. So you make them, and then if someone else edits them out, you're just like, what?
Devastated.
You cannot move forward without this image, and you will fight. I really had to get over that.
Did other people?
No.
Okay.
No, God, I mean, no. We
Yeah.
could barely do it ourselves. And then you kind of, we have this big pool of images. Well, in reality, you never forget. You never, and it's really hard. It's like overcoming the worst part of yourself, that little stingy, angry, ego-filled, you know, artist that, you know, we've had to hone ourselves into to make it in this world, in New York, as in the art world. So, but
Amy and
no.
I had to negotiate between each other what images. There's some images that I shot that I was in love with that she was like, no. And there's some images that she was in love with and I was like, no. And some of those made it in the final edit. You know, we just negotiated. We figured out a way of working together. And that was part of the collaboration. And you know, there's a push and pull. And then once we decided which images we were both comfortable in putting into the I think we gave John Jenkins, the publisher, I think we gave him the 80 images or something like that. And there was like an A pile and a B pile that we did together. And then John made his first edit. And then from there, Amy and I always worked together. We always came to agreement. It would take a couple days sometimes, take 10 minutes sometimes. And then we would go to John and then he would give his input. So it was very much our project. We always wanted to stay between the two of us, but he was very much he also had a big voice in what the final edit for the book was.
Yeah. Well, it was basically agreeing with us, but he did, I would say, at the book level, maybe he suggested a couple images, and then at the show level, Brian Clamp also suggested a couple images. So there is like this, you know, everyone that you come in contact with along the way is investing in the project. They're investing time, money, energy, their own reputation, and their own energy, and their own support of the project. So you give them, you know, within reason. But I would definitely say with two artists, it becomes a little more, you know, just more voices. But
what I think becomes beautiful in that is that, and what I was touching on before, is that this is really the project of both of ours. And so the benefits of both of our eyes are in it. So when you're editing by yourself, you may not have that kind of critical eye against your own work. Yeah.
Sure.
So from the beginning, we said all the images belong to both of us. And, you know, of course, there were moments that we held on to our own individual images. But for the most part, we really tried to kind of bring ourselves back to that idea that it belongs to both of us. It's about the project. It's about the book. It's about making the best statement that we can make with the images that we made.
How were you? Excuse me. How were your geographical locations set and the route that you chose to pursue for taking the pictures of your for your project? And would have been a larger route possible if you had more time? Would have that affected a lot the work, you think?
I don't know if it would have affected a lot of the work, but we definitely would have had more work, you know. So we only
probably would have
had,
driven across the country or something, I think.
or to different parts. Australia is populated on the coast, so although the landmass is the same size as the U.S., they only have 20 or 21 million people, and everyone lives on the coast for the most part, and the middle of the country is basically inhabitable. So we wanted to go to areas that were populated. We wanted to photograph the people. It was a social study, in a sense.
But we didn't want to be just in Sydney, you know, because that's, you know, it's a big city and it's very, you know, very Western, or there's a global feeling to it. So we also tend to be a lot in small towns and kind of rural areas in our own work. So
the road trip was very important for us.
Yeah.
It was a lot about the journey.
And there's a lot of discussion and planning and talking in the car. You know, a lot of our projects, I'm sure Stranded, and I'm sure American Pops Nuts, and this is what there was, is a lot. I mean, a lot of it doesn't happen as you're shooting. It happens as you're thinking, and you're alone in the car, and you're like, oh, you know, you're driving across this vast landscape, just plotting and planning.
And actually, you just reminded me, there was one location that we were meant to go to, but that was like with the heaviest rain season in 10 years, and the road that led to that one town was closed. So we had to renegotiate where we were going at one point. But see, I've already forgotten about it until today when you mention it. So.
Was there any film left at the end of the?
Yes.
Yeah, we divvied it up. We should have returned it to Kodak.
Why?
There wasn't much. There wasn't much. Ooh, yeah. One more nail in the coffin. We.
One more question.
Yeah, one more question. One more question.
Hi, my name is Randy. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like you guys had to negotiate a lot. Are you satisfied with the end result? That's a hard question.
Very satisfied.
Yeah, very satisfied.
Really?
Yeah, I'm very satisfied. I mean, you know, it's an anomaly. I don't know. Stacey lives in Australia, so she has more of an ongoing relationship with Australia. But for me, the thing I feel maybe the most shaky about is the topic sometimes, because I went to Australia, I came back. This is a discrete experience, and I hope I can go back, but I don't know. I've got to get the funds together, right? So. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, I feel very comfortable with the what I'm taking away is the collaboration, the process of making a book, of, you know, going through this experience, and, you know, gaining the kind of energy and the criticality of another artist, which I think, I mean, I guess if I want to, you know, just focus on something or stress something, that is something that I never kind of thought, you know, we had a conversation and we were like drinking a beer, and then it's like, okay, now we're doing a whole project in a book on this foreign country. And I think that's just a wonderful thing, to keep yourself open to that, and also just take risks that you think, you know, even as I was going there, I was like, what is gonna happen? Like, is this ever gonna be a book, ever gonna be a show? Is this just kind of like a lark? But, you know, you go and you just stay open to it, and then you see what happens. So I'm happy.
It was like a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.